Hey guys, I know, I'm super late. I'm so sorry. I've been doing a lot of things, and as a result of it, I didn't have a chance to write my notes for these because you all know that my notes for this series is extremely detailed because I read some of the parts of Lady Whistledown. As a result of that, I'm late, but I'm here. So hopefully we can wrap this whole thing up and you enjoy it. I personally think that despite there being rumors that they may have an additional part to this, that they finished this the right way. So let's go ahead and get started. Hit that like button. George's mom, the princess, is pissed because Dr. Monroe has been fired. If she saw what Charlotte saw, I wonder if she would have fired him as well, because it seems sometimes to me like his mom, the princess, is willing to do anything in order to make him be what she deems as normal. And I don't know how far she would go. You all tell me what you think. She does not like that Charlotte is acting like a queen, because at this point, whether everybody realizes it or not, the princess has been making moves like she's the queen, even though she's just a princess. So now she's realizing that not only does she have the title, but that Charlotte is utilizing the weight that she has. So she's upset because she finds out that Charlotte has moved to the queue to be with the queen. Dr. Monroe insists that, she's done all these things, but the king isn't done with his treatments. And his mom is like, okay, so what's next? What else do we got to do? Because she's out of the loop. Normally she would know this. He lets her know that he can't really do anything else. There's nothing that's going to be next. He's dismissed. She's like, okay, the king would not dismiss you. And he's like, it wasn't the king. She can't believe it. She's in shock. Fast forward to the present. Dearest gentle reader, as winter turns to spring, England wakes to welcome nature's abundance. We see Lady Bridgerton, also known as Violet, and she's joining Lady Danbury on a walk. And they're talking about how it's a perfect day for a stroll. Violet lets Lady Danbury know that she's thinking about starting over, meaning she wants to remarry or court or be open to the idea of love again. She's like, but Edmund is a hard act to follow because unlike so many other people in their time, they were actually in love. She has high standards, and Lady Danbury is like, it's okay. That's a good thing that you have high standards, and it's a good thing that you are ready to get back out there. I want you to enjoy yourself. She then goes to get something before they leave out. Violet is standing in the living room looking around, and she notices the mantle and the various things on the mantle. And at first she's like, oh, okay, these must be things that your kids got you. But then she notices something that is very familiar to her. She notices the birthday hat behind the clock. In case you guys forgot, because it's been a long time since I've been here to talk about this, Violet's father made these hats for Violet and other members of the family for the birthday. And he decided to make one for Lady Danbury way back in the day with the help of Violet. But she didn't know who the hat was for. So she pulls it out to make sure she's seeing the right thing. And then she quickly puts it back because she's realizing something here. We then hear our narrator again. One can find gardens in bloom in the most interesting of places. Discoveries are everywhere. Mother Nature is sharing her secrets. Lady Danbury comes back in, and Violet looks a little flustered, but she's ready for the walk, so they leave out. We see Queen Charlotte in the present posing with her children as they're being painted by a painter. They're all complaining about how uncomfortable it is and how much longer are they going to do that. And Queen Charlotte isn't trying to hear it because she's still upset at the fact that they're having this royal painting with her and all the kids, and she doesn't have any royal babies to also be painted. So Prince George is like, you're being unfair, mother. And she is like, you haven't produced any heirs among you. I'm not being unfair. You failed at your duties. Then you hear the person who's painting asking, is the king going to join you all soon? We know the king isn't joining them. The king's never joined them for any painting, which makes me wonder if every time they use a different painter, because how did that not get out? Anyways, so we know he's not coming. Everyone gets up and leaves. Brimsley looks at him. They have a little discussion, and he tells him to continue painting. This author has it on good authority that the Queen's growing displeasures was on full display at a recent family portrait sitting, meaning the artist ran his mouth. One has to wonder, will Queen Charlotte's relentless pursuit of a royal heir be the royal family's undoing, or can a mother's love conquer all? We're back in the past. George is eating. She tells him that he looks better because if you guys remember, he's not been eating real food. He's been tortured. He's been burnt. He's been pushed underwater. He's had all these things done to him. He's been branded. Like, he's been going through a lot of stuff. So he immediately starts talking about how she shouldn't have come and how he wants her to go back to Buckingham Palace. But after what she's seen, she has no desire to be anywhere but by his side, because even though he seems not to realize it, the girl loves him. So she's like, you're saying that I shouldn't be here, but I apologize for not being here sooner. And then we get one of the many dialogues that I'm going to read. That's just chef's kiss. I left some parts out, but I left a good portion in. He goes, you are not listening to me. She says, I have heard that you wish I had not come, that you want me to go, that you do not want to see me. What I have not heard is that you do not love me. I have been suffering alone, believing I am a failure as a wife, as your queen, because you stay from me as though I am a disease. And then today, it suddenly occurred to me that perhaps there is another reason, a better reason. Perhaps you stay away from me because you care for me. Perhaps you stay away from me because you love me. Do you love me? He says, I'm trying to protect you. She says, do you love me? He says, I cannot, we cannot. This conversation, I cannot do this. I never wanted to marry. She says, do you love me? In other words, I hear all your excuses, but answer my question, George. Do you love me? He says, Charlotte, please stop. She says, is it because you do not believe that I could love you? I do. I love you, George. I love you so much that I will do as you wish. If you do not love me, say you do not love me, and I will go. I will go back to Buckingham House, and we can live our separate lives, and I will have this baby alone, and I will make do and fill my days and survive all on my own. I will do that. But first, you have to say that you do not love me. You have to tell me that I am utterly alone in this world. The fact that she said that she's surrounded by all these people, and if she doesn't have his love, she feels like she's all alone, speaks volumes to the way that she felt at this time about her husband. He says, I am a madman. I am danger. In my mind, there are different worlds creeping in. The heavens and the earth collide. I do not know where I am. She says, do you love me? He says, you do not wish a life with me for yourself. No one wishes that. She says, George, I will stand with you between the heavens and the earth. I will tell you where you are. Do you love me? He finally breaks and he says, I love you. Goodness gracious, it's about time the man admitted it. The passion in this scene, y'all, was so undeniable that I had to save the lines, because these two strangers, despite their circumstances, have managed to fall in love. This is a great experiment, and the experiment has worked, well, so far, because they're still waiting on their heir. But this experiment has worked because this is what they have. They have each other, right? He said, from the moment I saw you trying to go over the wall, I have loved you desperately. I cannot breathe when you are not near. I love you, Charlotte. My heart calls your name. And then they kiss. Now, I'm not giving it passion. The way that he does it is so beautiful. And you hear him begin to whimper and to cry a little bit. And he says, I wanted to tell you, I wanted you to know this madness has been my secret my entire life. This darkness is my burden. Y'all, I feel myself getting teary-eyed right now because it was such an authentic moment that in that moment I was left in tears. He says, "You bring the light." She says, "George, it is you and me. We can do this together." He kisses her again. So they're finally together. They over there having the best makeup sex of their lives. We then see them laying together, and she lets him know as he's laying on her stomach that, the baby will be here very soon. He rests his head and says, "Hello, little king, hello." And it ends right there. Such a beautiful moment. We're then back at Lady Danbury's house. Coral's getting Lady Danbury ready for another walk. We know that she normally meets Violet's daddy on these walks. Coral tells her that the cloak makes a nice blanket if she decides to have solitude on the ground. I did not catch it the first time that I watched it. I didn't realize until later on, the first time I watched it, what she was saying here, but this time I caught it right away, which is that she was privy to the situation that was going on between the two of them, because why would you tell her that the cloak makes good to lay on the blanket, to lay on the ground as a blanket? Because she knew what was going on. She asks, was he kind? And Lady Danbury says he was joyful. She felt joy. Coral is happy for her. Lady Danbury leaves out. Then we see her outside patiently waiting for Lord Ledger. He comes, but Violet is with him. You can see a little bit of a disappointment on Lady Danbury's face. They talk a little bit, and he ends up saying that he hopes that Violet has a reputation like Lady Danbury's when she gets older because she's such a great woman. And the scene is kind of odd to me. I don't understand why he cut it off right here the way that he did, but you all tell me. Lady Danbury wishes them well and thanks Lord Ledger for his kindness. And he thanks her, and they say goodbye. I don't understand why it ended this way. I don't know if it's because they should have never done it in the first place, if it was because it was dangerous territory. Part of me was like, okay, he liked her, he wanted to try her out, he got her, and then he was done. And then a part of me was like, maybe he realized it was too dangerous and they would never be able to be together because in their society it would be a scandal. So I'm not sure, but you guys tell me what you think. Back to Princess Augusta. She's over there telling Lord Bute and Earl that the king is fine because they want to know what's going on. They're like, okay, he's fine, great. Then he can be available to address Parliament. Flash to the past. Brimsley tells Queen Charlotte and Prince George and Princess Elizabeth. Okay. Brimsley tells Queen Charlotte that Prince George and Princess Elizabeth are there to see her. Okay, I'm back. Princess Elizabeth is talking about how hard it is to try to have a baby, how they've been focused on nothing else but trying. And Prince George is upset because he's grieving about the fact that his daughter is dead and they're over here talking about making heirs. And his mom hasn't even stopped 1 minute, dropped her mask and dealt with that. He says she knows no compassion when it comes to them, and she shows no compassion to them. And they've worked so hard to work with her, and yet she's not working with them. He says, do you even realize that Elizabeth, my sister, had so many miscarriages? And this strikes something in her, so I thought, but it wasn't what I wanted it to be. Because Charlotte realizes in this moment that she didn't know this. And this is something that, you would think a mother would know about their kids. Princess Elizabeth says, they've all had miscarriages, which shows you how disconnected she is. She says, we're trying. Charlotte doesn't really want to hear it, though. She's like, look, it's difficult, but y'all can do it. Prince George says, how do you know whether or not we can do it when you don't even know us? You've never been a mother. That shocked me because I had always assumed that she was a great mom. But then I was like, wait a second. How could I think she was a great mom when I didn't even know that she had kids until this series came on? Because we don't hear about her kids in the other season 1 through 3 or 1 through 2 at this point, because this came after. Queen Charlotte tells them that she's done her best, that they don't have any clue of what she's went through for them, that she's been an excellent mom. And Prince George is basically like, look, I don't mean to pop your bubble, but you haven't been a good mom. You've been a good queen. I don't think she raised the kids. I think the servants did. Back to the past. Reynolds gives the queen, not the queen is there. Reynolds gives the king a letter from the princess. King George reads it, tears it up. He kisses Charlotte and leaves to go do his work outside farming. Reynolds warns her that King George is gonna have good and bad days. She feels like he's better. Her being there has made him better. It's gonna be better. And that all he needed was a routine and a different doctor. Reynolds is like, okay, and he leaves. We then see Reynolds and Brimsley later on. They're taking a bath together. They talk about George and how they hope he's going to stay well because they too want a life together. And as long as the king and queen are together, the both of them can be together as well because they'll both be serving the two of them. And I'm seeing this and I'm wondering why they didn't get their lifetime. I want to know what happened. They hope their love will make it through everything, and they hope their love of the king and queen can make miracles happen for them, and they kiss. We see Lady Danbury, and she is going to see Princess Augusta to figure out what's going on with the titles. Princess Augusta has been told that Queen Charlotte visited Lady Danbury, so she don't want to talk about titles. She wants to talk about that. Lady Danbury's like, she came to see me to offer her condolences about the death, of my husband, Lord Danbury. That's all. And the princess is like, okay, it must have been, a big deal to her to come and visit you because she's supposed to be in confinement. Because with her carrying the heir, she's precious cargo. Lady Danbury says, yeah, she came to see me because it's a fact that, my son is going to inherit his father's title and estate. And Princess Augusta says, that's not a fact. Only the king can determine whether or not this experiment goes to the next generation. As far as she's concerned, it's still just going to be right where it's at. And that dad died, so that's that. But she could probably get her an answer if Lady Danbury shares some information. And there was a lot of info that Lady Danbury could have shared. But as you guys remember, let me remind you, the last time we were here, when they got together, Charlotte and Agatha, Lady Danbury, decided that they wanted to be friends. And because she's now her friend, she's not going to do that. Later, we see Coral, and Coral's like, okay, she's not going to help you, so why don't you just talk to Queen Charlotte about it? She's like, no, I don't want to worry her about things like that. She's pregnant. Coral's like, I've heard rumors about the king and how he's not well, so all this could be at risk. And she's like, look, I'm shutting it down. That's not the case. We're not going to worry her with that. It's a new day. Princess Augusta pops up at Q. She tells Brimsley and Reynolds to let the king know she's waiting. Charlotte steps in. She tells his mom that King George is not receiving visitors at this time. And she's like, I'm not a visitor. I'm his mom. And she says he's not receiving visitors at this time. And the princess doesn't like that because once again, she's become too comfortable because her role is to bear kids. It's not for her to have an opinion. You then hear the music. And you hear Princess say, you carry one king in your womb. The other, George, I carry that king. And while your little king can hide out cozy and warm in the embrace of your belly, my king cannot. How do you not know what I have always understood? From the moment a king is born, there is no hiding for him. There is no room for illness or weakness. There is only power. I have done all I can to ensure his power, and you are undoing it. Charlotte's like, that's not true. She says, he is not even trying, and you are allowing it. You cannot allow him to hide. His crown will not survive. He has a country. He has people. He must rule. Lord Bute is waiting. The government is growing restless and suspicious. George must face Parliament. She grabs her things to leave and says, "This is on you now. He is yours." In other words, you decided you want to get involved. You're with him. You're the queen. I need you to fix this. Charlotte then leaves, goes to her husband and says, your mom was here. You got to go to Buckingham House. We have to go. So you can address Parliament. The people need their king. Flashback to the present. Charlotte is fussing about her kids. She's ranting and calling them whiny and ungrateful. She feels like she was a great mom, and she tries to get Brimsley to agree, but Brimsley isn't agreeing. She dismisses everybody, tells him to speak freely. He points out that yes, she's a great queen, but the only person she serves is the king. Everyone serves the king. They care for him above all. And she's like, but wait a second. That's not true, Brimsley, because you care for me. And he says yes, and he'll continue to do so until his final days. And that's when we realize that they've been together all this time, and Charlotte knows nothing about Brimsley. It's insulting, if you ask me. And I say that because she says to him after that, after he's saying that he'll be with her for the remainder of his days, she says, "Brimsley, do you have any family? Have you ever been married?" And I said, wow. And he's like, no, he could never find someone who was free to spend a lifetime with him. He is there. And the conversation ends there. And I wonder what got it to that point. The point that he is alone. Did Reynolds get sent away because of the king's condition? Like, what happened there? Back to the past. King George and Queen Charlotte return to Buckingham House. Lady Danbury is there to see the queen, and she's happy that she's doing better. Charlotte says she's glad to be home. She missed her company. She's asking her if there's anything that she can do regarding the death of her husband. And even though this would be a great time to say something, Lady Danbury says no. Spending time with a friend is all I need. They then start talking about the birth of the baby, and we find out that the royal physician lied to Charlotte and told her that the birth would be quick and painless. I hate men acting like they know what women go through, and I don't understand why he would lie to her. So Lady Danbury lets her know that it's the worst pain ever. And the queen is like, "Are you serious?" And Lady Danbury says, "Okay, it only hurts a little bit, and then you'll hardly remember." She hardly remembered it when it was over. And she looks relieved. My mom told me that crap too. And I'm going to tell y'all like this. My son is about to be 18. And I still remember that pain. 18 years later, that stomach and that back labor was ridiculous. And I'll never forget how it felt. Because I literally, I felt like somebody was ripping me apart. So hearing that, you'll forget about it. No, you are relieved. You feel joyous to hold your baby, but I remember the pain. Back to the present. Agatha and Violet are walking. Violet asks Agatha about what she meant when she said that her garden didn't bloom until after her husband died. And Lady Danbury tries to quickly change the subject because we know that her garden bloomed because of her daddy. Lady Danbury says, she wanted to feel alive, and she lived a life, and she has loved and been loved, and that's all she'll say, but Violet wants to know more. Lady Danbury asks her, "If I ever told you about the queen's brother," in other words, I'm going to make you think that maybe it was the queen's brother I was in love with, but it wasn't. It was your daddy. We go back to the past, and Lady Danbury and Duke Adolphus, which is the queen's brother, are speaking. He lets her know that because of Charlotte's pregnancy, that he's going to be there a little longer, and he wants to know if he can see her, and she agrees. But we know she's not really interested in him. She's doing this because this is what women often did in order to survive. Queen Charlotte finds King George writing his speech to Parliament. He feels a lot of pressure because he knows how important this speech is. Next thing we know, Charlotte says the baby is coming. Reynolds follows as George runs to Charlotte and the doctor. He greets the Archbishop and Lord Bute. They're all standing outside because this has to be witnessed in some capacity. So they're standing outside the door in the hallway. He tries to go in the room, and the Archbishop stops him. He's waiting outside with all the men, and he can hear Queen Charlotte moaning. Lady Danbury then comes out and says she's asking for you, and he gets a whole bunch of objections, and he's being told no. And George is basically like, if you like your job and if you want to keep your job, you'll let me go in this room and you'll stop blocking me. So he goes in, he takes Charlotte's hand. She asks him to stay. The royal doctor is looking at him and he's like, this is a problem. The baby's coming out feet first. He eases her thoughts. He asks Lady Danbury, what do you think? Because you've given birth before. And she says she's losing a lot of blood. He tells her, you know what, Charlotte, you got this. You're strong. You'll be fine. One of my favorite animals, this horse, was born breech, and he's more than okay. Next thing we know, the son is born. George is holding his newborn son. We hear from him that the baby is good, but the queen is wondering if there are any signs, wondering if he has the same thing that George has, because apparently this happened from birth. George says he's going to be our next king. He's perfection. Kind of meaning whatever he has going on, whether there's issues or not, he's perfect and he'll be loved. Then we have Adolphus and Lady Danbury. They're talking about the baby and all these things, and she's being distracted because Lord Ledger is out there playing with Violet. She says that, she's hot, she needs to go inside. Or the sun, she had too much sun, she needs to go inside. We then see Lady Danbury after this visiting the princess again, because I think that seeing him ignited something in her, and she's like, she don't want this. She don't want to have to be with the man. And she's trying to find out again about the title. And she reminds her again that I told you that this is a decision from the king. And she's mad because Lady Danbury isn't telling her anything. And this is not what they do. And the next thing we know, Lady Danbury is crying. And she's like, hush, hush, stop it, stop it. Don't do that. Don't do that. She doesn't care about her problem. She tells people to go. And she offers her some pear brandy instead. She says, you have to endure. I know about enduring. We find out that King George II was not a good father-in-law, that he beat George as well as her, and she did not fall in part. Instead, she decided that her son was going to be king and that he would rule, and she's basically been running things ever since. She says, I do not like you. However, you have been an admirable adversary thus far. Our battles bring me satisfaction, meaning the Dowager Princess loves going back and forth with her because it's a woman that can keep up with her and she's bored, basically. She pours a bit more brandy and asks her again how things have been at Buckingham House. And Lady Danbury responds, I believe that news depends on what's become of my son's title, Your Highness. Meaning, we're going to keep on going through this back and forth, and Lady Danbury isn't giving up. Don't mind me as I adjust. My back is killing me, which is why I'm down here. King George prepares to speak to Parliament. He's holding his speech in his hand as he's shaking as Charlotte is telling him goodbye. He's not sure if he can do this, and he goes off to give this speech. She tells Brimsley he's going to be brilliant. So he is in the carriage, and he is having a breakdown to the point where we see him lie on the floor of the carriage. So they arrive where Parliament is. A whole bunch of people are standing outside. Reynolds is trying to get him out of the carriage, but he won't even get off the floor, and he's blocking the door. He is looking around and he sees people are staring, so he lets them leave. He then comes back and tells Queen Charlotte that the king never got out his carriage. Next thing we know, she's asking why did he not, because he was fine when he left. And Reynolds yells and he's like, he's not fine. He wasn't fine. And he apologizes, but it's clear that she was still in denial. Charlotte goes to check on him in the room, and she's calling him and he's talking to her, and she can't find him. And then she sees that he's under the bed and he's apologizing, but he says he can't come out, that the heavens can't find him under the bed. He's hiding. So she tells him everything's okay, and she crawls under the bed and lays on her back next to him. He says he couldn't get out of the carriage and read his speech, and she reassures him that he'll do better next time. And he says, there is no better. There is no cure. This is who I am. I will be here sometimes, and sometimes I will be, you can leave me. I would understand and I would let you go. You have half a husband, Charlotte, half a life. I cannot give you the future you deserve. Not a full me, not a full marriage, only half. Half a man, half a king, half a life. Which is exactly what she's gotten. She's gotten bits and pieces of him over the years. She says, if what we have is half, then we shall make it the very best half. I love you. It is enough. I am your queen, and as long as I am so, I shall never leave your side. You are king. You will be king. Your children will rule. Together we are whole. He says, I am so sorry that I did not give you a choice, that I did not tell you the truth of who I was before we read. And she says, you did tell me the truth. You said you were George. That is who you are. Half king, half farmer, but always just George. That is all you need to be. And I was like, whoo. Whenever they're together, the love is just loving. And the crazy thing is, old George and old, well, I shouldn't say old because past George and past Charlotte seem to be just as much in love as current George and current Charlotte when he's lucid, when he's there. He's like, I don't know how to repair what happened with Parliament, though I really messed up. And she suggests bringing Parliament to the crown instead of the other way around. She says it might be time to open the doors at Buckingham House. We then see Adolphus and Lady Danbury. He's at her house. His business is finished. The nephew is born. He's ready to go. He says, will you come with me and be my wife? I know it's quick, but there's something between us, and I believe we could be great together. He leans in, kisses her, tells her to think about it, and he'll wait for the answer. It's present time. Violet is still trying to figure out what Lady Danbury was doing with her daddy. So she wants this crate taken from her father's house and brought to her home so she can present Lady Danbury with whatever in the crate when they have tea on the Friday. We find out that the king is throwing a ball. Lord Bute and the other lords have warned Princess Augusta that the ball has to be flawless and he has to show up because they're worried about his mental state because they know something's off. Princess Augusta says he'll be fine. The crown is safe. He is fine. They point out that if he cannot perform his duties, that they're going to have to talk about removing him. Invitations to the ball are delivered. Buckingham House is getting ready for the ball. The king is in awe of his queen's beauty. He's looking at this picture and he sees that it looks good, but he really wasn't in it, even though he's in it. And he shakes out as he goes to reach her when he's talking about her beauty and his hand is shaking. And she takes his hand and puts it in hers and says, it's you and me. The ball is underway. We see Violet's mom fussing at her because she's looking around looking for the queen and she doesn't feel like it's ladylike. You see her speak to Lady Danbury and wave. Reynolds announces the king and queen. It takes a little bit for them to come out, but they come out and they greet people. Charlotte tells him, don't be nervous. They share a moment together. She tells him to smile and wave. They move to the dance floor and they begin dancing together. She tells him to keep his eyes on her. It's just them. And the crowd watches as they dance. It's very beautiful. I always love the dance scenes. At the end of the dance, they kiss. King George then thanks them for coming to celebrate the birth of their baby and announces that he'll be George IV. They toast to their future king. We then see the king and queen continuing to dance and smiling together. You see her brother and Lady Danbury talking, and she asks him, what would life look like if we were to marry? And he says, I would rule. You'll have duties as well. I would accept your children as my own. You'll have to learn the language, though, and I'm going to need an heir. We can come back to England every few years. And she heard enough at that point. She tells him that she can't marry him, that at this point she can't marry anyone, that he's a wonderful man, but she never wants to be married again. She says she spent her life breathing someone else's air, and she doesn't know any other way, and she needs to learn to breathe on her own, which is deep. In other words, I need to learn how to do this without a man. He feels like she's making a terrible mistake, but she knows what she wants. We then see the princess and the queen talking. She tells her it's a lovely ball. Queen Charlotte says that they love hosting it, that they're going to do more of them. She lets her know that she only ever wanted to make George happy, and she now sees that Queen Charlotte makes him happy, and she thanks her, which is a big deal. King George comes behind Queen Charlotte, suggests they dance. I Will Always Love You plays in the background as they dance. And as they're dancing, off to the side, away from everyone else's eyes, we see Brimsley and Reynolds dancing together, laughing and smiling and enjoying each other. Then we see present day. Brimsley is remembering this moment, and he's dancing, and his arm is in the air like this as he's dancing, but he's by himself. He's alone. And it made me sad to see that because, as I said before, what happened to Reynolds? We see Queen Charlotte looking at portraits. She gets a visit from Prince Edward and Prince Victoria. They said they've waited a while. There are no doubts that they've produced an heir. You see the excitement on her face, as well as the relief and the joy. And she hugs them and tells them that they did well. And you can tell that her son is not accustomed to receiving this type of love from her. Princess Victoria thinks that it will be a girl, and Queen Charlotte says a girl is wonderful. A strong queen is what this country needs. And she says, thank you. The country needs a strong queen because at this point for decades, queens have been running it, whether they realize it or not. As Lady Danbury is leaving the ball, Charlotte approaches, wondering what she was thinking, why she wouldn't be willing to marry her brother because he's a good man. Lady Danbury is like, look, I'm sorry. The queen says, he'll be fine, but I'm worried about you. She's upset because Lady Danbury didn't come to her with her fears about her inheritance and the title. Lady Danbury is like, look, the palace has enough burdens. I didn't want to add to it. And she says, we are one crown. The weight is hers as well as the king's. They rule for the welfare of their subjects, new and old. The castle walls are high to protect them all. Meaning, earlier in the earlier season, Lady Danbury told her her walls were too high. And now she's saying that the walls are high because it's not just to protect us, but to protect everyone. She says, next time, I think you should come to us directly. Doing otherwise suggests that you don't feel like they're capable of addressing them, unless that's what she believes. And then she says, I'll call for you later, Lady Danbury, meaning your title's not going anywhere. Just like that, she's good. We then find out, because the king is trying to get the queen to drink, that she's pregnant again. She holds his hands to her belly and says, it's him and her. And then they kiss. Back to the present. Lady Danbury comes to see Violet. Violet has her birthday hats out, sprung out all over the table. Because as I said, she's trying to catch Lady Danbury. She's trying to figure out what's really going on with this situation. She says her father made them for her, and she made them for Edmund and their children. She didn't always keep them on display, but lately she's been feeling sentimental. She picks up one and hands it to Lady Danbury. She thought she enjoyed them before letting them go. And Lady Danbury looks at Violet with tears in her eyes, like she's ready to say something. They're staring at each other for a while, and she's like, Violet. And she's looking like, what you gonna tell me? And she says that she should leave the hats where they are. They are lovely and they are cheerful. Violet agrees and they sit down to have tea. We see Queen Charlotte, still present day. She arrives at Q. They're trying to warn her before she goes in there, but she's like, I can take care of my husband. I gotta go see him. So she enters his room and he tells her not to bother him. He's drawing on the wall, doing his stuff, right? She says that Charlotte, she has wonderful news, and he's still not paying her any attention. So she climbs under the bed and she's like, where's Farmer George? Can I speak to Farmer George? She wants him to hide from the heavens with her. Such a beautiful scene because it goes back to in the past where he said he goes under the bed to hide from the heavens. So he gets under the bed with her and they're both on their back. And he climbs next to her and he says hello to her and he calls her by name. And he says, it's quiet here. She tells him they succeeded. Their son, Edward, has married and his wife is with child. His line will live on. He says, it's our line. They hold hands. He thanks her and she remembers him as he was when he was young. Like they show her at her age looking at a young him. She thanks him and they share a kiss. It's so beautiful. I get chills, right? He then tells her she did not go over the wall. And she says, no, George, I did not go over the wall. And the both of them are now looking at each other, remembering each other as they were. And that is it, with the camera panning away as you see their feet under the bed and they're having their talk. And that's it. The last scene had me in tears because this woman has loved this man despite his ailment, despite his inability to be there for her, despite his warning, even after they got married, that he was only going to be with her half of the time. It was such a beautiful season. I really liked it. It made me laugh. It made me cry. I feel like this was more heavier than most Bridgertons, but I liked it because it was impactful to me and it made me think. And it also showed just how much these two people loved each other and how much she faced as a queen. And it made me wonder more about her. Because initially I thought she was just this rigid person. Like, how dare she always say, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? But it's because she's been spending most of her life waiting to see if he's having a good day, waiting to see if he's having a bad day. It's a lot. I also feel like it shows us how much medicine has overcome, because I don't know if he has schizophrenia or what the situation is, but between that and him having that panic attack where he was laying on the ground in the carriage, it showed very realistic layers of life. But that is all I have. Thank you guys so much for joining me for this Bridgerton review. There is other content on the channel for those of you who are only here for the Bridgerton reviews. In a couple of weeks, I will be starting to review the series Big Love. I'm also going to be reviewing the season 1 of Black Cake. I read the book. I saw a couple of episodes, so now I'm going to watch them and review them. Hopefully you guys will stick around. Thank you so much. Until next time.